Hey guys, what's up? Yeah, no, this is another recording. Stupid little mini camera is not working right, and then I tried the handheld cam that I used for my last video, but it's 1:05 in the morning right now, and this camera doesn't do well in the dark. In fact, it doesn't really do well in dim light, and I'm doing this in the living room right now with one lamp, and it's bright enough for my eyes, but it's not bright enough for the camera. So you would barely be seeing me at all, so hence the recording. Sorry. Anyway, as I continue to watch videos on YouTube and listen to conversations, in public, among people I know, and hear a lot of garbage on the radio as well, it's, I'm constantly reminded over and over again of, just how pathetic our education system seems to have gotten these days. But not only that, but because of the lack of real understanding that the average person seems to have on any one complicated subject, it's making me entertain a certain thought. Now, notice I said entertain, not necessarily believe in, but I'm just entertaining the thought that maybe those who used to withhold knowledge from the public in the past maybe had a point. Before I get to that rather controversial point that I'm going to be playing devil's advocate on, and I'm only doing that just so I can, spark some conversation and discussion about that, let me first touch on something that I already touched on before and try to further, show how I'm viewing people's understanding of certain subjects these days, like with this whole race debate and also with religious debates and with political debates and all that type of stuff. I'm constantly seeing people assert positions that they really don't know shit about, but they think they do because they have a cursory understanding of it, or they were fed a lot of garbage that sounded good, but because they don't have a background in the subject, they can't tell that it's bullshit. And this is like a widespread problem. I already mentioned this in my last couple of videos, like when I was talking about how human beings who are only using their five senses to come to a conclusion about something can't fully understand, the deeper aspects of any one thing, because our five senses can easily be fooled and our minds are, quite frankly, illusion machines. But let me come up with, some other examples to try to prove my point. I'm pretty sure the person listening to this right now has heard at one time or another that human beings only use 10% of their brains. Sometimes I've heard it 15%, but the common one is usually 10. And the usual argument goes that if we could somehow find a way to tap that remaining 90%, then we could be like, gods on earth. We'd be like super geniuses, and we could have telekinetic powers and psychic abilities and other sorts of shit like that. And it's a nice thought, but it's bullshit. Fact is, we use 100% of our brains. All the time. Period. The misunderstanding comes from the fact that depending on what you happen to be doing at the time, certain parts of your brain are firing and other parts are not. But on any day, you have used 100% of your brains many times over because of all the activities that you do. Put it to you this way. Say in your typical day, you wake up in the morning, you go to the toilet, you brush your teeth, take your shower, head to the kitchen, grab some bread for toast, throw it in the toaster, push the sliding thing down, grab your jelly and butter or whatever the hell you're going to be putting your toast on, get your newspaper, toaster goes pop, you hear it, walk over, grab your bread, put it on the platter, put your shit on the bread, start munching on the bread as you're reading your newspaper and then thinking about how long it's going to take you to get to work and what the commute's going to be like, and then turning on the radio to, listen to how your commute's going to be and what the weather's going to be like. In that short span of time, you have probably used just about all of your brain because of all the different activities that you had to engage in that short amount of time. Sorry. The science is there, but most people believe that whole 10% shit because they don't study how the brain works. So they just hear that little 10% tidbit and just go along with a complete misunderstanding of how the brain works. Oh yeah, we only use 10% of our brains. No, you're wrong. We use 100%. Now, here's the rub. Technically, you could say that at any given moment we're only using part of our brains depending on what activity we're engaging in at the time. But because of a lack of understanding of how the brain actually functions by the lack of understanding by the average person in the street, when they hear that arbitrary amount of 10%, or if they hear you only use a small amount of your brain, they're seeing this as some hard and fast rule, not realizing what it really means in context of the knowledge of how the brain works. If they did have that knowledge, then they would realize that the average person's belief of how the brain works is quite frankly bullshit. But because most people don't know how the brain works, they are believing this rather bullshit view of, brain function. It gets even funnier when you realize even those who study the brain will admit that they don't fully understand how it completely works anyway. So, there's still a lot we don't know. But what we do know, the little bit of knowledge we have gained about our brains, is that, yeah, you do use all of it. The only time you don't use all of it in any given day is if you happen to be brain damaged in some way. But this is a really good example, I think, of how easy it is to believe bullshit because you don't have an understanding of the subject matter that you got that little bit of trivia from. And it's this sort of thing that I'm seeing in a lot of debates, or arguments among people when they're debating certain scientific, information. And it gets really frustrating when you're dealing with ignorant people trying to argue with people who know about the field saying you're wrong. And then the only excuse they can come up with when the people who know the material are arguing back, no, you're wrong. You're just trying to suppress the truth. You didn't even study this shit. How are you going to be able to make a charge like that if you don't understand the material? It's basically the person who is going to continue arguing, we only use 10% of our brains. And the guy who actually works with brains is saying, no, that's not true. You use 100%. No, we don't. If you're just trying to suppress the truth because you don't want people to gain psychic powers. Sounds ridiculous, right? But this is what a lot of people are doing with these type of arguments. And this is what I'm seeing, and that's why I tend to either get highly amused or get disgusted. Let me give another example, and already I can tell this is going quite long. I'm already gone past 7 minutes. It's not just simply a lack of understanding of a technical field, or a hard science, or a philosophy or things like that. Sometimes it could be something more on the abstract of simply just not understanding the context on what a certain thing is said, or how a certain bit of trivia has been observed, or how somebody said a certain thing and how it's been repeated later. Context is key, and I notice a lot of people tend to throw context out when it comes to certain little bits of trivia that they keep in their head. To give an example of what I'm trying to get at, okay, take the game Assassin's Creed, which I haven't played, but I've seen the first game played all the way through, and I really want to play the second one. When I finally have a functioning video card again for my main computer, and I actually have some freaking disposable income, I want to grab that, at least the second game in the series, and go on from there, but I'm going on a tangent. There's a certain tenet that the assassins in that game hold. And I'm not spoiling anything for those who haven't played the game, but those who have played the game know what I'm about to mention. The tenet goes something like this. This is what the assassins in the game believe. Nothing is true, all is permitted. Now, the average person hearing that most likely is going to take it at face value. Oh, they believe that everything is complete bullshit and they can just do whatever they want. I guess that's why they think they can just go around killing people then, as assassins. And you're wrong if you think that. That's not what the statement is supposed to mean. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's more of a guideline for a certain type of thinking that the assassins are supposed to engage in. It's supposed to be a way to open the door to remove themselves from arbitrary morality. Funny thing is, I got that from the first time I heard that statement, but that's because philosophy is one of my favorite things to study. And I looked into all this stuff, from Kant to, Taoism and all that type of stuff. I like researching this shit. And I loved, even when I was younger, debating things such as morality and ethics. So when I hear a statement like that, I understand where that statement is coming from. When they're basically saying something like, nothing is true, all is permitted. If you compare that to a world with hard and fast morality rules, and then you compare it to a group of people who realize that all these hard and fast rules are indeed just made up by human beings, it starts to make more sense. It's more of a guideline and more of the opening up into an entirely different type of philosophy. But without that context, you wouldn't know that that's what it meant. You would just simply accept it as, oh, these guys just think they can do whatever the hell they want. No, that's not what the statement was supposed to mean. If you play the game, of course, you realize that at the end of the game, but I got it from the beginning, but then I understood the context of it. Most people wouldn't. They wouldn't understand the context, especially if they come from a completely different philosophical background, a different ethical background. You talk to somebody who believes in objective morality, they wouldn't get it. They don't understand the context from which this was spoken of. But somebody who understands things like subjective morality would get it, or at least have the keys or the clues to help them unlock what that statement would mean. Context is important. But again, this is something that a lot of people don't seem to take into account whenever they hear little bits of information coming from one field or another. And I think this is a major problem, and it's one of the things that we seem to lack these days in our widespread education system. It's interesting to me how we don't really specialize in any particular field until we get to college or trade schools or things like that. So for the most part, the education that people get in this country is very vague. It's very general. They just hit you with a whole lot of subjects at once to give you a general understanding of things. And more or less a general understanding of things is all you really need to, function in the world that you're in. But it's not enough to fully understand one particular topic in depth. You only get that if you yourself decide to delve into what other people have already uncovered about that particular topic, or if you went to a college or a particular school for it. And the sad thing is, a lot of people who go to college these days don't even use the college effectively. They just simply see it as basically a time to party, get wasted, and have a lot of sex. They don't really use that time wisely. Or I'm just going in there to get my MBA so I can, do well in the business, get a white collar job. Few people actually delve into these fields. So that means that there are few people who are qualified to truly teach others about that particular field of study. So to see lay people argue with those who have spent a lot of time on this is sort of to me like the street fighter going up against the MMA specialist saying that, I can kick his fucking ass. Nah, you're living a pipe dream. That guy specialized in fucking people up. You just have a general knowledge of fucking people up. It may help you out when you're dealing with other people who have a general knowledge, but once you're dealing with the specialist, you're screwed. Now, this leads me to that rather controversial point that I was mentioning earlier. The fact that maybe, just maybe, people who withheld information, or should I say who withheld knowledge and understanding of certain fields from the public, may have had a point. And again, this is not something that I really believe, but it is a thought that I've entertained every now and then and realized that, okay, maybe they have reasons because of what I'm seeing right now. If you're dealing with a group of people who are easily misled, easily confused, and can be guided into any direction you see fit just by fucking with their emotions and appealing to their egos, why would you then expose them to certain subjects and certain amounts of knowledge that would take a focus of mind to fully comprehend and would take a certain amount of dedication to add to that field of knowledge when you consider that the amount of knowledge that we have, which is quite vast and considerable, is still woefully incomplete when you realize how much we don't know and how much we've been wrong over the centuries. We have a history of getting things wrong more than we have a history of getting things right. So in order for us to be able to figure out what's right, you need a certain focus of mind and you need a certain amount of dedication, and you need to be willing to throw away your biases and just simply be willing to accept the data as it comes in and not be willing to manipulate the data as it comes in just because you are trying to force people to believe a certain thing that you want to get them to believe because you have an egotistical stake in it or an emotional stake in it. Human beings, for the most part, are not rational creatures. We're not. We deal with rationality all the time, but it's something that we've invented to offset our irrational responses to the stimulus in the world around us. So it takes a certain studious frame of mind and a certain detached frame of mind to continue along the fields of adding to human knowledge. To give this human knowledge to the masses is to give a very dangerous tool to them, because they're not going to know what the fuck to do with it. And we're seeing this right now on a variety of different issues and in a variety of different fields and arenas. We see people talking about politics who have no fucking clue how politics works, or fully understand that the things that they want to put into politics will completely fuck up the society that they're living in. We see people trying to argue scientific merits for things that absolutely have no scientific merit whatsoever. We see people discussing things that have no basis in truth and trying to form entire ideologies around it, and then later on try to force their governments to go with these certain ideologies which have no basis in fact or in observation. And we see this on and on and on with people who take a little bit of knowledge and then basically twist that bit of knowledge to go with their own irrational beliefs that they want to cling on to. They don't have the focus of mind in order to keep the facts straight or to keep the knowledge pure. So for those who would be concerned about this sort of thing, I could see them saying that, nah, we really shouldn't be letting these morons, I wouldn't be teaching these people science. They wouldn't know what the fuck to do with it. No, I'm not going to be teaching these people politics. They wouldn't know what the fuck to do with it. It sort of reminds me a little bit of a guy in ancient China who was known as the Taoist of the Demon Valley. And I think I might get the name wrong, but he was a dude who was known for teaching a whole lot of secrets that would give people power over others. And all it really was an observation of human nature. If you read the guy's writings and you read what his students had to say about his so-called secret teachings, it was just simply stuff about this is how human beings work, this is how to manipulate human beings, this is how to manipulate a society, and how to run a society. And the guy had hoped that when he taught his students this shit, that they would actually help to create a better world, because he was living in a time when there was a whole lot of warfare going on. He was living, during the whole Warring States period in China, where there was a whole lot of unrest. And he was hoping that when he taught people this shit, that they would go out and end the unrest and come up with a, better world, a better society. And all his students did was go and basically help warlords become better warlords. So the guy basically died depressed. He was like bemoaning the fact that his knowledge was being used for the wrong reasons. You see this a lot also in Taoist thought, how they're like, once you learn this shit, don't teach it to other people. Don't let your knowledge shine. Part of the reason is because these people didn't want to be persecuted and they didn't want to be used by society. But the other reason is because they understood that, quite frankly, society wouldn't get it, or they would use it in stupid fucking ways. And as much as I happen to be somebody who believes that education should be given to everybody and we should all basically have a chance to be enlightened on a wide variety of topics, because quite frankly, that's the only way we would have a freer society where things like a democracy or even anarchy could work, I also see the point of the people who want to withhold knowledge from people, because quite frankly, people are fucking stupid. And we see this all the time. And a major source of this stupidity is our own irrationality and our ridiculous need to always be the center of the universe at any given point. So, I leave this to the listener. I'm going to end this off right here. What do you think? The problems that we're having right now, is it simply because of a lack of information and people misconstruing information and misinformation? Or is it because we have just too much information and few people truly understand how to deal with it, and we need to take more of a totalitarian approach when it comes to knowledge? I already know what I believe, but I still would like to see a discussion on the subject, because I think it would be quite enlightening. Anyway, that's that. Catch you guys later.